Looks like we're ready to start the game. Let's add in another event listener. So we've got a game message area that says press here to start. And let's deliver on that where the user can press there and it will start the game. So we'll start a start function. The event listener that we're listening for is a click event. And we can create a function in order to start the game. We can just call it start to keep it really simple. And I'm going to place that under the keys object. So a function, and the function is start. So this is where our game begins. And what do we need in order to start the game? Well, we need a character to move around. And in this case, we're creating a plane. So let's go ahead and create that plane. I'm also going to create another object that we can store information into. We'll just call it player for now. And we can set various variables in here throughout the game. So we can have our score. And for now, default, we can equal that to 0. We can also have a speed. So we're trying to make it as dynamic as possible. And also another one to check to see if the game is in play. So this is our basic controller for if the game is in play or not in play. And of course, we can add in additional variables and values as needed. So once we hit start, we're taking that player object and we're taking the in play value, which is a Boolean value, and we're going to set that to true. So that's going to kick off our gameplay. We can also add in and create elements. So creating an element, we're going to call it plane. So within the player object, so that's the one that we just created, we're going to use document. And there's a JavaScript method to create elements. That's create element. And what type of element we want to create. So in this case, we want to create a div. So the reason I'm putting it into player plane is that player is a global object, and that gives us the ability to reference it with anywhere within the other functions. So it makes it essentially really easy for me to grab that and make use of it in other parts of the code without having to pass it through. So next thing that we want to do is we want to set some attributes because we want to give it a class so it stands out, so it's not just a plain div, and give it a class, and we'll create that class of plane. And then also what we want to do is take our game area and append a child to it, and that child is going to be the player plane object that we just created. So effectively what will happen here is we're going to create an element on the page when we hit start. So I think we could try that out, and we hit start and we don't see anything. And the reason we don't see anything is that we've got an empty plane. But you see that it did add that in. So if I refresh it and if I open the game area up, there's no element, there's no div with a class of plane, but watch what happens when I click. You see that it gets added in there. So plane got added in. So that's the first step in what we need to do. And also we need to apply some styling so it actually looks like something. So it actually looks like a plane, and that will make a better user experience. We could of course turn it into a square if we wanted to. Or we could use a background image. So setting its position as absolute, and that is absolutely important because that's going to give us the ability to position it top and left. And with JavaScript, we just need to update the style property values, and that gives us the ability to move our object around, our element around. So setting a top position of 100, left position of 50, creating a width. So by default, we can do 80 pixels, a height, and also we can do that 40 pixels. And taking a background image, and luckily for me, I already have an image stored. So this is called plain PNG. And then I'm going to use background cover so that it covers the entire position area. So background size cover. So now let's try that out. So when I click it, we get an element plane being attached. So there's our plane. So now we click it and we get a plane on our screen. So not a whole lot happening quite yet. And that's coming up in the next lesson where we're going to move this around according to our key presses. So now it's up to you. Go ahead and add in the start functionality to start the game, adding in our player plane on the screen, creating an element on the fly dynamically using create element, JavaScript document create element method, and then set an attribute, adding in that class of plane, and then appending to the element, the game area element, the plane that we just created. And once you have that in your project, you're ready to move on to the next step, and that's to move that plane around. And that's coming up next.